And I'm going to be recording another modern game this time with Melira Pod. This is the particular list I'm going to be using, and there are a lot of different slots that are flexible. And I decided to go with a couple different cards over those for a few reasons. I think the most notable thing about this list is I'm playing 3 Wall of Roots instead of 1. A lot of lists are just playing 1 because the amount of mana required to get a lot of the engines working with the synergies isn't as high as the other pod deck is, but I feel like pod lets me filter through a certain way with Wall of Roots better than the lack thereof, so I upped it and it lets me keep more 7 card hands. It's just more efficient mana creatures. And with the lack of Noble Hierarch in place of Deathrite Shaman not always being active as a mana producing creature, I think having the extra 2 Wall of Roots is correct. In this, though, I'm forfeiting a few slots for other cards, and which one of those kind of has been difficult to pick. I mean, it was between Orzhov Pontiff, Revelarch, and several other cards, but I ended up going with Eternal Witness because it seemed to be underperforming. The only thing it really ended up doing was allowing me to combo off with Metamorph and Revelarch, returning several cards, but there's rarely a case where that needed to happen, where the game stalled out long enough and I didn't have anything else to do. And I'm almost never potting into the Eternal Witness for the 3-drop. There's only been like one game in the past few games of testing where it was relevant, and the guy happened to mill both Murderous Red Caps, and that was my only way to win. So once in a while it matters, but I don't think it was quite justified playing over the Wall of Roots as far as the other cards go. Other notable differences is I'm not playing mainboard hand disruption anymore. I decided to go with spot removal in the form of Abrupt Decay, and that's because of the large presence of Tarmogoyf based decks and other mid-range strategies, mostly green-black X, green-blue X, some kind of Tarmogoyf based attrition, slow grinding, whether it be a Junts type strategy or junk or just straight green-black. There's all kinds of variants. I feel like having a way to deal with Tarmogoyf and other creatures along those lines is beneficial, and disrupting their hand is usually irrelevant at that point, especially if I'm going to be losing life for it. And Abrupt Decay is just a stop all to a lot of different strategies, like the blue-white-red deck that has been featuring a Splinter Twin type combo. It can get around that pretty well, and different aspects along those lines. But a weird thing that I'm trying to figure out how to squeeze in is I moved my Sigarda to the sideboard, and I think the logic behind mainboarding the Abrupt Decays would also justify mainboarding the Sigarda, but the problem is there just isn't anything else that can come out for the main board as far as functioning as a primary method of winning. It just doesn't contribute as well as the other cards do. And game 1, that's what I want to be doing, so I ended up cutting Sigarda to the sideboard. Other than that, I think the list is pretty straightforward. A couple different sideboard choices, I guess, could be in question. Like, I went up to more Obstinate Baloths because of the presence of Liliana of the Veil, and I feel like that plus Lingering Souls helps put pressure on these Planeswalkers, and Lingering Souls ends up coming in like 2 out of 3 matchups anyway. Cards that I don't have in the sideboard that I'm probably going to end up getting is like Kataki, even though I feel like Melira has a better matchup against the robots and affinity decks than the Kiki version does, so it doesn't like need the Katakis initially, but it still might be a good idea because the matchup sometimes is soft. And maybe Gut Shot could be considerable for that and other tempo strategies, but I ended up going with Gaddock Teeg over them because this can be a little soft to Tron on the draw, so I felt like Gaddock Teeg helped me there. I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Dismember is good against the fast aggro decks and mostly Infect. Really, I guess the only fast aggro deck is great against is Affinity, because I really don't want it against the new Zoo decks popping up because the life is pretty relevant. And Ethos from Canada's was cut to the sideboard because Eggs was banned and Storm doesn't see play anymore, so I don't need to mainboard it as efficiently, and might not even need the sideboard anymore, but I'm going to keep it around for now, just in case. And as having hand disruption available is good, and I felt like if I'm not mainboarding it doesn't need to be Thoughtseize. And so this is the list I decided to run. I'm only running 6 fetch lands at the moment, and that might be a mistake with Deathray Shaman, but I'm only playing 2 instead of the standard 3, and usually they run 8, so I felt like 6 was probably correct and let me not pay as much life. I could run more copies of cards like Woodland Cemetery, and I felt like that was a little stronger. And it's been pretty good results for the most part. There aren't that many bad matchups. The deck's much stronger on the play than a lot of other decks can say, even the aggressive decks. That can a lot of the time be the deciding factor of whether or not you end up winning. And the other change I made recently is I went from 3 Viscera Seer to 2, and I'm trying out Cartel Aristocrat. I've seen a lot of 4-0 lists on Magic Online playing it, so I figured it'd be a good idea to try it out. And it just gives you the option of potting from 1 to 2 to get the Sacrifice Outlet to win. Because if you either don't have one in your hand and you don't have Lingering Souls on the board, you only can get it with Ranger Reveos, and that can a lot of the time have already happened, and they can just disrupt you that way, and then you're kind of stuck trying to find a way to sacrifice your creatures. Whereas, like, if you still have the 2-drop in your deck, all your 1-drops are now live. Well, I guess all but Viscera Seer, because if you have the Viscera Seer, it doesn't matter, but there actually has been a moment where I had Lingering Souls tokens and I turned it into a Viscera Seer, but that's so rare that you need the capability of having a 2-drop in order to pot into. Other than that, I think the deck is pretty good. It's well positioned right now, especially after the banning of Second Sunrise, even though I think it was already well positioned against it, especially the Melira version having the hand disruption and the Aethersworn Canonist. Anyway, stick around for a few games. Hopefully things will go well.